Okay, well, thanks so much. Welcome to a live recording of JS Party. JS Party is a weekly celebration of JavaScript and the web. We are a podcast that records live on Thursdays, and we are super excited. I would say thrilled, but I saw Emma's talk this morning. I'm not sure if I can say thrilled or not.
You're just showing yourself up as an American.
That's right. I'm a thrilled American. Excited to be here with you all. JS Party is a show, we even call it a community celebration, so we try to be as community-oriented and focused as possible. And there's three things that we do towards that end. The first one is we do record live. We have a free and open Slack chat where we encourage everybody to come and hang out with us while we record the show, chat with us, interact with the people who are recording. That's on Thursdays, 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. And it's always way more fun when there's live chatters there listening. Another thing that we do to stay community oriented is that we have a request line. So we take requests. We would love to hear from the audience. We'd love to talk about things and invite guests who our audience wants to hear, so we don't have to guess. Y'all can just tell us what you'd like to hear. So to do that, you go to changelog.com/request, hit JS Party in the drop-down, and let us know a show that you'd like us to do. And then the third thing that we do is we come to conferences and we hang out with people and we shake hands IRL, we record chats, we do talks such as this one. So that's what we're here to do today, and we're excited to do that. So here's how it's going to work. We're calling this lightning chats. I should say another thing that we do is we experiment quite a bit. We're calling this lightning chat. It's a lot like lightning talks, where you have 5 minutes to come up and talk about what it is that you think is interesting. And we're going to chat with you for 5 minutes. When the 5 minutes goes up, we're going to kick you off the stage and we're going to have the next person come up. But it wouldn't be a JS Party without some BMC beats. So please enjoy this music.
You can get up and dance too, right?
We're the
Role models? Okay, well get up and dance, right? Y'all can dance. We do this every week, right? We're just sitting there on Zoom and people are watching and we're like, yeah.
I'm a programmer, not an dancer.
Okay, well, the sound of those beats means it's time for JS Party. My name is Jerod Santo. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined by Kevin Ball. He goes as K-Ball. Say hi, K-Ball.
Hey, I'm K-Ball. Nice to see ya.
And this is Emma Vedekind.
Hi, can you hear me? I can't hear me.
We need to get Emma turned up.
Is that better? Can you, ooh, no? Yeah? Ooh, I can also just talk louder. Cool.
And we're ready to go. So first up, we did have we primed the pump a little bit. First of all, I should say this is for everybody to participate in. We were afraid or concerned that perhaps nobody would come up and we'd have not much of a show. So we did prime the pump, and I do have a short list of people that we've contacted before that we would love to chat with. As we make it through the list, maybe some people don't show up, maybe some people do. We'd love to open it up for everybody to come and talk. And then if we run out of time during this session, we are down on the third floor, booth 72, with the mic all set up, and we'll continue the lightning chats there if you don't get a turn here during this session. So the first person we'd like to call up on the stage is Denise Cooper. Denise is happy to join us, but has a flight to catch, so she's going first.
Yeah.
And here comes Denise. Round of applause for Denise. Hi, thank you for joining us. Please have a seat.
You're welcome.
I'm leaving my purse there.
Okay.
You guys have a watch on it.
We'll
'cause
keep an eye on
I'll
that.
need it to get on the plane.
So the other thing I didn't say is, maybe I did say it, but I'll say it again, is that this is a community thing. So we want to talk about anything that you want to talk about, Denise. We literally prepared nothing. And so please give us a topic, and we'd be happy to chat about it with you.
Okay. I normally talk about inner source, but after the keynotes today, I think it's important to talk about corporate responsibility. Because I was really disturbed by the AWS talk. I was disturbed because there was an implication that OSI-approved licensing is somehow optional.
Optional.
And that is not the case. So I called him out. I called Arun out. I'm not saying Arun's a bad guy, but I think when you let your customers decide how you're going to engage with open source, you run the risk of listening to customers that are maybe not so savvy and think that change is maybe in the air. But it's not clear to me that change needs to happen to open source. I think we got this far because we made good choices about how to make it last this long. And I think we should make changes to the licensing schemes and to the importance of licensing very, very carefully. So that's what I would like to talk about.
Let's do that. So one thing to point out for those who weren't at the keynote this morning listening to the podcast is that there was a talk from AWS's Arun Gupta in which he talked about free credits for open source projects. Am I on?
Free credits for open source projects with a set of criteria, and some of those criteria they put preferably, and in some cases I was like, that's overly restrictive, and in other cases, like the licensing you brought up, I was wondering, that seems a little...
It is really dangerous.
So the point that you like to highlight is free credits for open source projects, preferably OSI approved projects. Is that?
Yeah, that preferable has to go away.
Can you explain OSI? Like,
Yeah, sure. So the OSI, I worked on the OSI for 10 years, so I'm in a good position to talk about it, I think. I think I might have served longer than almost anybody else. But Michael Tiemann, local god of open source, was on that board with me too. The OSI decides whether licenses are OSD compliant. OSD is the open source definition. It's 10 clauses. It's very straightforward. It's common right now for people to be suggesting changes to open source that would make it better. We actually got a license was submitted this week called the vaccine license that has a field of use restriction that only lets you use the software if you vaccinated your children. Like, people are suggesting really silly field of use restrictions, but some of them are well-intentioned. Like, I wish that big corporations would have to pay, so I want to put a clause in the license that says that. That is a field of use restriction that automatically disqualifies you from OSI approval, because that clause in the OSD says things you cannot do field of use restrictions. And we talked about this a lot 20 years ago. Most of us in those days were libertarians or at least liberal leaning, and some of us didn't want the software to be used, for instance, for nuclear power or for weaponry. But we debated it out and realized that we had to set that aside in order to not create the slippery slope of everybody needs a special carve-out. And all through the history of OSI, licenses that aren't OSD compliant come from companies that are trying to get a carve-out for their business model because they don't have a good, strong understanding that open source is not a business model, and they're going to need to change what they do. They can't have their cake and eat it too. Either they get the halo effect of open source, or they get to say how they want to run their business in ways that open source people would not appreciate. But they can't do both. And we've been fighting that fight forever now. It's really disheartening to see a major venue like AWS, who's trying to convince us that they're serious about open source, use the word preferable as though there was any other option if you're actually dealing with open source. Now, you'd be told that OSI doesn't own the trademark to the term open source. Nobody owns that trademark because the trademark office decided that it wasn't trademarkable.
Okay.
But they do own OSI approved license, which tells you that that license fits within the OSD and therefore doesn't do anything to harm the open source movement, right? So examples of things, recent things that were problematic, Facebook a few months ago now, a year ago now, put a license on React that included an extra patent clause. And Apache said, a lot of people tried to talk them out of it. They were sure they had to do it to fend off piracy. I said, look, you've got deep pockets. Your job is to engage those pirates and take them to the mat. Look at what Vizio's doing. That's what you should be doing as a deep pocket, not trying to write your way around it. But in the meantime, Apache is going to say no to that. It's an additional obligation. And as soon as Apache started stripping out React code, they shifted their program, right? That is how we have been enforcing for the last 20 years. It's not ideal, but it's what we've got.
All right.
All right. Everybody, round of applause for Denise.
Speaker number one.
All right. We thought that buzzer would be fun. Turns out it's kind of rude. And so I apologize for that, because I could just hop into the code and change it, but let's not do that. Let's not go there. Okay. Next up, if you're here, is Sean Wang. Is Sean here?
Sean.
Swix, where you at?
Oh, no.
He's going to miss it.
He's going to be in trouble.
Is Vanessa Alvarez in the building? Oh, my list is running dry. Is Mo Hampton here?
Woo!
Oh,
Here we
Mo is
go.
here. Round of applause for Mo. Come on down.
I feel like we need
Hi,
entrance
welcome.
music.
We do need
We
entrance
probably do.
music. Here, we'll just beatbox it, right?
Okay.
Oh, I didn't have intro music. That's okay, though. I'm okay. I had it in my head. when I
Let's
was
play
walking
this
out.
game. If you had to pick some intro music for yourself, what have you picked?
Living my life like it's golden. Jill Scott, if you know about it.
All right,
I'm
very good.
Armenian soul kind of head.
All right, Mo, well, thanks for joining us. The 5 minutes on the clock. We'd love to chat with you.
Perfect. So for me, and something dear to my heart, it's just breaking into tech. And I've done that transition about 3 years ago, and I love what I do. There's no other job out there for me. I am a software engineer right now
Awesome.
for defense. I'm a government contractor.
Okay.
But the thing that I think about a lot is those that have non-traditional CS backgrounds and that come in. I mean, there's some that come back from like chemistry, or some people that have like something in biology that come in, or even people with marketing and advertisement. But I know it's possible, but I don't know how others feel working with somebody who's non-CS on the team. So I guess I can open that up. Like, how do you guys feel when we come into your space?
Oh,
You're
not
one of
coming
me.
into- First of all, you're not coming into our space. It's all of our space.
That's true.
Right.
That's a very
So
non-inclusive way
I think
to
we
say
need
it.
to change the paradigm of what it means to become a developer, because I have a CS degree, and that did put me in an advantage. I'm not going to lie about that. I do feel like that was a privilege. That being said, in terms of the things that I had to learn, I had to work hard to like learn those skills, and to see people coming from non-traditional backgrounds. I love working with them. I feel like they bring a vantage point that I have not thought about before. I don't know how to like formulate my thoughts right now. Does
Yeah,
anyone
no,
else?
I
need, like,
100%
Give you a different point of
agree.
view
I
Yeah.
actually,
than somebody who's been traditionally through a certain pipeline or hit
Correct.
certain classes.
Yes.
They have a different worldview on
absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it may be slightly harder to break in,
Yeah.
but honestly, having a more diverse background gives you an advantage once you're in the game. Because, I mean, this may be tooting my own horn because I'm not a CS background, but I feel like, if you go through a CS program, yes, you understand a little bit more of a lot of the fundamental stuff, but you actually don't have that much of a perspective of how the rest of the world works.
Right.
And if you're coming from another background, especially if you're coming from another professional background, that synergy of skills of I understand how this world works and now I understand the code, like that's an incredible advantage because you can link between those things. One place where we as coders often fall down is in communication with people outside of the software world, but we're building tools for humans. We need to talk to those people.
Yeah. I feel like because I went the CS route, I was very tunnel vision. And when I got to my first job, I did terribly. Like I thought I was going to quit or like get fired because all I knew was like that bubble sort was worse runtime than merge sort. I didn't
bubble sort.
understand the practicalities of working in our environment. And so people who come from alternative backgrounds to get into this role, I think they're used to working harder than we are, right?
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, they feel like they have to prove themselves more, and unfortunately, that is the case. I would love to change that. But I also feel like if you come from a boot camp, you're better prepared practicality-wise to get into development than a CS background, at least in my experience.
That's true. That's a good point to bring out. And I was just thinking about, because you were saying people that come from different backgrounds or different professional, like for me, I'm a veteran. So I will look at a problem set differently and kind of charge forward first. I don't know if that's the right way to do things. I go head first and then figure out the collateral damage later. But
Right.
it's the different aspects that we all bring to the table. And I
Yeah.
hope that people are more open towards it. But sometimes you do feel as if you have to prove yourself more.
Well,
So
degree
it's nice
does
to
not
hear it.
equate to like your intelligence. I know IBM, I think, just recently started doing like apprenticeships, not apprenticeships, but like trials for our boot camp attendees, where they would bring them in and like hire them for a year and help them grow. So like even if you didn't feel like you were prepared, they would try to coach you along and help you, because I think what's important is potential and willingness to learn, as opposed to the piece of paper that you would get if you graduated.
And I think it's good also because we have like say for me, I'm stronger probably in my soft skills than I am in my hard skills in software engineering. But I do have the people that have that background in education to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So it's very good as long as we know our skill sets and we know the gaps, that we come together and try to help each other out.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you guys can talk to me about that.
Oh yeah, and let's get rid of the word soft skills. They're human skills,
They
right?
are.
This is how we interact with humans, and that is the end goal of what we're trying to do. We're building things for people.
Yeah.
Cool.
Human
Oh, and that
skills.
sounds like 10 seconds left, right?
It does.
Yeah,
Can
you're
I
gonna
get
get
the
beat.
outro music
Give
then?
a shout out. You got a shout out you want to give? You got 5 seconds.
Oh, shout out to everybody at All Things Open. You guys are amazing for showing up.
Let's hear it for Mo.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. How about Maria Lamardo?
Yay.
Here she comes.
All right, what's your intro music?
I'm not singing.
Don't do that.
Not singing?
I'm not singing.
Please don't give K-Ball intro
Nobody
music.
wants to hear that.
Well, when you sit down, you can tell me if I pronounce your name correctly, or you can chide me if I did not. Please, we'd love to call you by name.
Maria Lamardo.
Maria.
Maria Lamardo.
Very good.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
That is beautiful. I cannot say it that well, but I'll do my best. What would you like to talk about today?
So I'm very passionate about web accessibility and building communities.
Yay.
Okay.
Lovely.
You want to do both of those? We got 5 minutes. You want to do
Web
accessibility?
accessibility sounds great.
Okay. Very good.
What got you into it? Like, what inspired you to?
Yeah, so I come from a non-conventional background. So I'm actually a behavior analyst. And so I provided behavioral therapy for people with developmental disabilities for 8 years before I switched into development. And while I was learning how to program, I was like so happy when I discovered web accessibility. And I was like, oh, yes, this is for me. So after that, I just kind of went all in on web accessibility.
I think what's interesting is that we hear web accessibility, and my first thought goes to like screen reader compliance and keyboard navigation, like all these things. I also feel like accessibility is broadened to thinking about who's consuming your applications and your website. So we are in a place of privilege where we have high-speed internet in this country. But if your app is being consumed by people with lower speed internet, we need to be mindful of that. We shouldn't be shipping all of this really heavy stuff. So accessibility is not just about what we traditionally think of as accessibility, but also can people access your application from right,
like different hardware.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
network speed is a huge one. I have T-Mobile, which is great because they give you internet access anywhere you go, pretty much. Like they have 200 countries, or there aren't even that many countries, but essentially anywhere you go, you're going to have internet access, but it's at 2G speeds. And if you ever try to access the internet, the websites you're used to accessing from your desktop or your laptop, even over Wi-Fi or whatever, at 2G speeds on a phone from somewhere halfway across the world, it is painful.
Yeah.
And many of, as Emma highlights, the same practices that are going to make your application accessible to folks here who have assistive software or things like that are the same things that are going to make it accessible to folks who have really poor internet connections.
Yeah, even thinking about creating progressive web apps where you could just launch right off your home screen, and it's just that much easier, like one step launch, and even if you don't have great connectivity, right? So it's very important. And kind of playing off of what Mo was saying, coming from a different background really gave me a new perspective, because I already had the experience from all the users who were struggling, interacting with these applications, and I just didn't know that the world existed for like coding such things, right? So now coming into it, it's like, well, I know exactly where all the pinpoints are, and now what can we do to fix it? So I do think that it's super advantageous to come in with that fresh perspective, and never let like your different background be like a negative thing. I think it's always a good thing.
Yes, and go ahead. I just talk a lot, so
I was
you
going
go.
to change the subject, so or not change it, but you go.
To your point about having seen the users, I wish every developer went and looked at the users of their application and watched them use it. And
Like
users
stare at them through their window, or what do you mean?
bring in folks who've never used your application but are in your target audience, or who do use your application every day, and just watch them use it, because your mind will be blown.
Yeah.
We have these models of how our stuff works, and other people, like normal people out in the world don't have those models. Like every time I've ever watched somebody use something I build, I'm flabbergasted. Like, you do what? You do how?
Yeah.
Like, but
It's humbling because you realize how much your stuff sucks.
yeah.
Like, I thought this was really good, and then I watched you try to use it, and it's not good. It's not
We
good.
make assumptions that users use our products the way we
The way we would.
Yeah, well, and we're still kind of seeing them every day as we build on them. So like to us, it's like, oh, well, we've definitely improved it, and now it's perfect. And then, you know, somebody's coming into it brand new, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, none of these make sense.
Is there any real low-hanging fruit of accessibility, like, or a gripe? Like, why does everybody get this wrong?
Use buttons for buttons, links for links. Don't take a focus
Yes.
like outline. Please just don't do it.
Yes. And if you are going to create custom elements, like custom drop-downs, in instances where you can't use like the native semantic HTML elements, you still have to make concerns such that it functions the same way a native input would.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. Like I would always say, like whether you're considering accessibility or not, like just put your mouse away. Try to navigate your entire application with the keyboard only, even if you're not turning on a screen reader. Like just kind of go through that basic navigation
Love that.
with your keyboard, and you should be able to access everything. And if you can't, then there's something wrong. So try to figure that out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maria. Hey, let's hear it for her.
Thank you, Maria.
Did Brian Douglas make it? Is Brian here?
He goes by
Aw,
B. Doogie, right? Where's B. Doogie?
I'm
Is
gonna.
B. Doogie here?
All these people.
How about
are gonna get
Eva Howl, or Ava? There she
Yay!
is. Come on down. Let's hear it for her.
As Ava is walking up, since so many people no-showed, that is an opportunity for everyone here who has a topic they want to talk about. So have that in your head. What would I talk about if I was on stage? So when Jerod opens the door, you're up, you're ready.
Is it Eva or Ava?
It's Eva.
Eva. Very good. Eva, thanks so much for joining us on stage here. We're happy to hear what you're up to. What you'd like to talk about?
I work for a company called This Labs, and we have an apprentice program where one of our big passion projects is getting more women into tech. Our founder is a woman. We have a lot of women on board. And so what we do is we take women who are coming out of boot camp and we pair them with a mentor, and then we're a consultancy. So we contract them out together with the idea being that the woman gets mentorship that she needs. We've heard a lot of companies say they don't like to hire junior developers because they've got to deal with the mentorship aspect.
Right.
So we provide that by pairing them up, and the company gets 40 hours of the junior and 20 hours of the senior. And then at the end of the contract, the company has the ability to hire the woman.
That's wonderful.
That is
So-
awesome.
Sounds very cool.
That's really.
How does it work in terms of if you're interested in getting involved, or?
You can come by our booth. We have one like literally right outside the store, or you can email hi@thisdot.co.
How does the mentorship aspect of that work?
So it varies from woman to woman. It kind of depends on the contract too, but the idea is that the mentor is there to help unblock the woman, to check PRs so that she's not crashing anything when she merges, and then also just to help navigate being on a technical team, especially in a sense where she may be the only woman on the
Right.
team. And that gets a little bit more tricky because a lot of times the senior developer will be male, and that's hard to have that do. But in that case, we like to try to plug her into her local community where she can find more mentors that are female too, even if they're not working on that particular project.
Awesome. What's the biggest challenge that you face with that?
Getting companies to put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Everybody is out there talking about diversity and inclusion. I live in Silicon Valley. Everybody knows that there's 25% of incoming software engineers are women. We've done huge pushes on this, and I get calls and people are super excited, and this is a wonderful program and we really want to do this. And I write back and I get radio silence. So I feel a little bit frustrated in that aspect that people are very willing to talk about it but not willing to do anything. So
So do the women come to you first and then you match them with a mentor and a company, or do they go to the company?
they come, so we partner with boot camps all around the
Oh,
country,
okay.
and we get the women applicants mainly through the boot camps, somewhat through just Twitter outreach and our website. And then the idea is that it's kind of a couple of moving pieces. Obviously, we want to pair the woman up with the company in that she has some basis in the technologies that they're using, and that there's a good fit with the mentor. Obviously, there's personalities there too, and then fit them with the company, and it kind of goes back and forth to make sure that everybody is a good working fit.
Yeah, I love this idea of an apprenticeship. I feel like this is something that, I mean, it is definitely important and helpful on the folks coming in, and I think from untraditional backgrounds, boot
Yes.
camps, women who are at a disadvantage, other underrepresented minorities who are at a disadvantage. Broadly, we as an industry suck at training people.
Yeah.
We are terrible. I mean, boot camps have somewhat solved the getting in.
Yep.
I get the first step, and then what? What do I do? Every company I talk to is like, do you have seniors? Do you have seniors? Do you have senior folks? Nobody's training senior folks.
Right.
Everyone's trying to hire senior folks, but we don't have this pipeline for how do I get from I just got into the industry to I'm able to lead a team or be a senior or something like that. So this props to you all for doing that. That's great. And I think the diversity aspect is a key and important step, but I'd love to see this everywhere.
I completely agree, because I think it's really hard for juniors to get the kind of on-the-job mentorship that they need, and so many companies, for whatever reason, just aren't willing to take that on and hire juniors. I think that a lot of times either their senior engineers are not positioned to do it, they don't want to take the extra financial burden of it. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons for it, but in our case, this is a way of us taking that out of the equation.
Does that typically bypass like the typical whiteboarding interview as well?
Yes.
Oh,
We do code exercises, but it's not a whiteboard interview. We are actually a fully remote company, so it'd be a little bit difficult to do a whiteboard interview. And we do other ways of measuring where she is and what technology she's good at. But no whiteboard interviews.
I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it code schools only, or can you be from a different background and still apply?
You can be from whatever background you want to apply. We focus mainly on boot camps just because that's where we find the majority of our non-traditional applicants are from.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, let's hear it for Eva. Woo! Jigyasa Grover? Might be saying that wrong. I'll say if Sean has showed up or Brian. We've talked to Maria and Mo. We talked to Vanessa. Is Vanessa here? There's Vanessa.
Yay.
Come on down. Vanessa Alvarez. Give her a hand.
Right. Is that the end of your list? Because
It is
you're
the
in
end of the
audience.
list.
Y'all
so
better get ready.
Y'all
Get
be
ready.
ready.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
So
Thanks
I
for
was
sitting
thinking
down.
about talking about changing careers, like in the tech industry, but
Okay.
then the other person who was talking had a good idea about whiteboarding, and I just want to hear about like what type of like interview process you guys do at your currently companies, because I don't like whiteboarding.
No one likes whiteboarding interviews.
I like whiteboarding interviews as
Why?
a taker. I hate it as a way to find good people.
You like
You would prefer to whiteboard?
what is wrong?
I didn't say I'd prefer it. It's fun. It's fun for me because I love goofing off, right? So I'll get up with folks and like whiteboarding, you get to, I like whiteboards in general. That's how I brainstorm. That's how I do whatever.
My
Just a fan of
house is full
whiteboards over here.
I have whiteboards in my office. It's a terrible way to interview people.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
absolutely terrible.
You should have led with
I
that.
think it's fun. It's terrible.
Can you enumerate why it's terrible?
Why it's terrible is because it's testing completely different things than what you care about for a candidate. So whiteboarding is testing how well do you improvise on the spot in front of people that you don't know with a marker in your hand.
And communicate.
And communicate with people you don't know, which communication, that part is actually, in my opinion, kind of valid because I think it's important that engineers can communicate.
No, that's valid, but in terms of being able to eloquently communicate.
On the spot,
Yeah.
under pressure, in
Yeah.
front of people you don't know, oftentimes with folks who are not the kindest of interviewers.
Right.
So yeah, it's setting folks up for failure unless they're skilled in things that are not actually helpful for their job.
Yeah, I had it was a good experience, but it really frustrated me because it was an interview for a UX engineering role building design systems with React. And the 2 out of the 4 interviews were about algorithms. And so I had to code binary trees on a whiteboard and find the broken edge. And I'm like, how is this relevant to the job I'm going to be doing? It's not. And that is so unfair to so many candidates. Going back to the whole, what if I'm not from a traditional CS background?
Yeah.
How is that testing anyone's ability to, like, you know, deduce information and, like, problem solve to a certain extent? It's not.
What if English isn't my first language?
I know. Well, yeah, exactly.
So what would you suggest, like, the appropriate,
Yeah, what's better?
what would be better instead of the
I
whiteboard?
like the take-home exam. So I had a really great interview with Gatsby. They gave me 3 questions, and they said, answer whichever one you feel comfortable answering. To give options to your candidates is incredible. That whole interview process was seamless. They also, like the take-home assessment, first of all, they were going to pay you for it, which is amazing because often these companies put you through the ringer with the amount of interviews, and it's unpaid. Right? The second piece of that is to do the tasks that you would be doing on the job. A, it's practical. B, you get to see if you even want to do this job in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think sticking to practical things that are also manageable, because a lot of us have families and other obligations, we can't give up time to go on site and give up a full day of work.
And applying is like almost a full-time job.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something interesting that we've been doing in my company, we stopped the whiteboarding, and right now what we're doing is basically we have a bunch of like functions, and then we tell the person like, hey, just pretend that you're working. We're working together, we're collaborating just like a normal day, and just tell us what is this function doing. And then we start like talking, and then if the person like, we want that engagement and we like that conversation happening, we're testing more of like, not so much of like their technical skills, yes, in a part, but more about like collaboration. We want if this person will reach to us if they have any questions.
Right.
Yep.
And it has worked for that us very
So like
well.
less of a test and more of a collaboration session.
Right, so it's like,
Yeah.
do you read and understand this function? Yes, okay, awesome. And if they get stuck, what are you thinking about? Tell us, oh, this is what I'm going through my mind. And that has worked better, and we have gotten them to be not so nervous, and it has helped us a lot, so.
Yeah, I also think it takes a lot of skill to be a good interviewer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, that's another thing,
Yeah.
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 The
Please don't try to,
closer,
I was just going to say as a last point, please don't try to trick your candidates and show who's
Yeah.
smarter in the room. That's not a good practice.
the closer you can get to it being what it's like to actually work here, the better of a tell you're going to be able to get. And you do want to scope that within the bounds of what's possible for that person. Like my favorite, both as an interviewer and an interviewee, my favorite way to interview someone is to do a scoped paid project.
Love that.
Now,
Yeah.
that is
That's great.
not always possible. If you have a full-time job and you have family obligations, you may not be able to take another paid, another project like that. And so you need to be accommodating. But the more you can get to, this is exactly what it's actually going to be like working in this environment, the better you both have
Yeah.
of being able to tell, is this going to be a good fit?
Yeah, awesome,
Well, that's our time. Vanessa, thanks so much for sitting down.
thank you.
Let's hear it. Okay, audience, if you have a project that you've been working on and you want to tell the world, if you have a passion that you care about and you'd like to chat with us, if you have a hand and you'd like to raise it high in the air, a heartbeat.
We got
There you
one.
go. Oh.
Oh, all right.
Either one. We'll line them up here. Yeah, run on down. Let's hear it for the
Down.
Come on down.
nice man who's running.
We need the Price is Right music.
We do. Come on down.
If I knew it, I would sing it, but I
I
don't.
was just singing it.
Hello, greetings.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. What's
Hey
your
guys, I'm Clinton Dreisig.
name? Okay, Clinton.
I keep
Nice to
hearing
meet
people
you.
talking about boot camps up here, and I decided to run up because I co-founded one
Yay.
and
Okay.
teach at one. So I thought it would be interesting to talk.
Awesome.
Tell us about that.
So yeah, a bunch of my students are here. They're all in the audience, which is awesome. I hope one of them runs
Hi,
up here.
Stu.
Hello. Wait, what's the boot camp called?
So it's called Momentum. It's local. It's just in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay.
But yeah, me and co-founder Jessica Mitch, we formed it after we both got our former boot camp closed down, and we knew what we were doing and loved it. So yeah, it's the most fulfilling and awesome thing to get to see new developers go from nothing to like full awesome developers.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the problems that people are talking about with not hiring junior developers, like I get to see this up close and personal every day, and it's that's the most disheartening thing, seeing people say, oh, we only hire senior developers, because the people that I see every day grow as developers are going to be the most amazing developers you've ever met. They're just not quite there yet, right?
Right.
But they're getting there. But yeah, it's such a cool thing. I can answer any questions about
How do we
it.
bridge that gap? I mean, there's obviously a problem, but there doesn't seem any obvious solutions to that problem.
So the easiest way I've seen so far, and this just takes time, is see that process. Like at this point, I've been teaching for about 5 years. And so I have people that I taught who are now senior developers at organizations. And they're hiring junior developers because they remember what it was like. And they went through that same process. But I think helping companies learn that hiring junior developers and training them is pretty much the best investment they can have. Our industry, people change jobs so quickly.
Right.
But you bring someone in early and you help train them, and they become a really loyal, really amazing employee that knows what's going on there, as well as anyone. But yeah, I think it's
The
an
risk is
education
that the loyalty doesn't actually stick, because people do move around so much that if I'm going to invest 3 years in a person and they're going to go upgrade to a different job, to me that's a loss.
Yeah.
Well, I think to both of your points, you have to think about it as an investment. Investments have risks.
Right.
There are things, but if we're willing to put in thousands of dollars to recruiting, we
Yes.
should be willing to put in half of that amount to training the people we already have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Good point.
frankly, I'd say twice that amount, right? If it costs you $10,000 to recruit a new senior developer, and you have someone who is already contributing, but you can spend $10,000 to upgrade them to a senior
Right.
developer, like, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
There's an old saying that I'll butcher, but it goes something like, what if, talking about investing training in their engineers, what if we spend all this money training them and then they leave, and then the response is, what if we don't spend it and then they stay? Like, they're going to suck forever. No, they won't. They'll still get better, but you can see that point there.
And the other thing past loyalty is, I think there's no better way for your senior developers to get better at being senior developers than to train junior developers. Like, what are you senior in if you
Right.
have no one you're teaching? People ask me all the time, like, oh, do you get bored teaching the same thing over and over? Like, you have no idea. I learn something every single day teaching new developers.
Sure.
They ask questions that I would have never thought of. There's new technologies I have to learn. Like, I've grown as a developer more teaching than I ever did previously. And I think that's going to be true in any company if you have your senior developers actively working to mentor people.
What does your curriculum look like?
We do JavaScript and Python, so it's a full stack curriculum. I just switched things. I tinker all the time with it, but so we do JavaScript for the first half of the course and Python and Django for the second half of the course.
And how long is it?
It's 12 weeks long.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Full immersion or part-time?
it's full immersion, so it's all day long. 9 to 5, like 4 hours of lecture, and who knows how many hours of projects every day. I kind of burn them out a little bit. We try and keep it to 60 hours a week.
The
Yeah.
folks back there know how many hours,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
going, oh.
But, yeah, so they're getting a break right now because we get to come out here and see this. But I thought it's so cool to have them immersed in the industry. I love it that
Absolutely.
we have ETO
Also,
here.
the
where they
fact
can
that
do
you brought them here
Yeah.
is super cool, because like I didn't get to go to conferences until I was like well into my first job. So
Yeah.
that's
Most
great.
people don't.
So do you feel pressured to constantly be updating that curriculum, especially with how fast the industry moves?
Yeah, I mean, for multiple reasons, right? I always want them to have the very best of content. And also for me and the other instructors, it sharpens our skills to constantly be revisiting what we're doing, making sure we're doing it right. But every class there's stuff that people get stuck on that I go, oh, I know a better way to teach that, or a better way to learn that. Yeah, so there's some pressure, but I mean, it's fun to do. I think, teaching is hard, but if you have the bug, like, you never want to stop doing it.
How can people apply?
How can people apply? Well, they can go to momentumlearn.com if they're interested. But or you can just find me or anyone else around here.
Very good.
Thank
Cool.
you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Kim,
Come on down.
come on down to Chinatown.
I was singing the theme earlier, but no one seemed to understand it.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to
That's why I
get
don't
for our
sing.
next lightning chat session, we're going to get the theme song to play as you
Yes.
come down. Hi, what's your name?
Good afternoon. My name's Henri. Henry in French.
Okay.
So,
Henri.
yeah.
Henri.
Bienvenue.
Merci bien.
Oh,
Is that all you have?
yes.
I'm like waiting. I'm like,
Well,
yeah.
You've reached the end of what he has.
You
C'est
actually
tout.
speak French.
Je
Well,
parle
absolument.
un petit
Le
peu
français,
de-
c'est ma langue maternelle. So I just said French is my mother tongue.
Oh, où habites-tu?
Alors, je suis canadien. Alors, j'habite à Toronto.
I have no idea what you just
Okay. I said I'm Canadian and I live in Toronto.
Okay.
Wonderful, welcome
Very
to
cool.
our
I mean, is this a translation podcast?
Yeah.
It's going to have to be.
We can go to Spanish, we can go to
Okay, un
German.
poquito, un poquito. Okay.
Puedo hablar español si quieres, pero...
All right, let's go. I mean, we just flipped the podcast.
All right.
Okay, so we
Let's have
started.
some
Oh
German.
man, we just started.
Well, we're wasting your time
Oh,
here. What do
okay.
you want to talk about? What would you like to talk
Okay,
about?
so I tend to hang out in the web performance space. So I was like, oh man, I think people are going to be bored, but I'm here to talk about something that's being worked on right now, which is the JPEG XL. So kind of a new format.
Okay.
So for all the web developers out there, images are a huge problem on the web. In fact, actually, for the person who talked about accessibility, the number 2 actually issue in accessibility is through images, which is alt text. So images are a problem like
sure.
through and through. So with the JPEG XL, basically what's going to happen is, essentially what happened, let me backtrack. A couple of years ago, is this my time up? It's
No.
No, that's the light going crazy. but
Okay.
yes, just keep talking.
A couple of years ago, to celebrate sort of the 25th anniversary of the JPEG, the Joint Photographics Expert Group put out a CFP, and because the JPEG is a format that's kind of like always being worked on, and so they receive 7 submissions, and 2 are picked. So basically, they're trying to see like how we can go about and improve the JPEG as a format. And essentially what happened, 2 were selected. One, so they're going to take sort of the best of both. So one is the, I'm going to pronounce it improperly, but FWIF, which is the free universal image format, which was being developed by Cloudinary. And the second was PIK, P-I-K, which was another format that was sort of being experimented with by the people at Google. So the 2, sort of like the best of both, are going to be used as they sort of make their way to this new format, which is going to be called the JPEG XL.
And what are the advantages of JPEG XL?
So essentially, with any sort of like recent format, you're going to get some improved encoding for sure. But things like responsive web design has been a huge burden on the web, simply because a lot of people just do not get it right. So you end up having a lot of data waste being sent down the pipe to users, and actually by corporations as well, because you get that wrong, those are your servers that you have to sort of pump the resources down. So that, obviously you're going to have animation, which is also a bit of an issue on the web, because a lot of people do fall back to the grossly oversized GIF. Yes, I said GIF.
GIF.
So that encoding is going to be improved. Obviously, we're going to have alpha channels. They're going to have adaptive compression, so essentially parts of the images are going to be compressed a little better than the others, the ones that need it anyhow. And obviously it's most likely going to be mostly lossy, but with the best encoding possible at the time, so you have this sort of like quasi lossless thing going on.
That was a lot of words that I don't know that much about, but I'm intrigued.
Okay, well, I mean, there's information online for sure. If you go to, I believe, jpeg.org. But at the end of the day, I think most people know images,
Yeah.
and most web developers certainly need to work with images. And it's just something that you talked about sort of having constricted data or
Constrained, yeah,
networks
yeah,
and
yep.
whatnot.
100%.
Exactly. You don't handle images properly, this is where you're going to feel it the most.
How did you, your question's probably more pertinent than mine. I was just
Oh,
gonna
You're wasting his time.
Okay.
Yeah. All of you.
Come on.
So the
Come on.
question I had, actually, you brought up accessibility.
Yes.
And one of the things that I have seen bandied around is embedding some of that alternate text in images so that it's not dependent on the web developer. It can actually be encoded. Is that something that's included in this?
So that's actually separate. It's funny you should say that, because I'm preparing a project and a talk on that. There is a push towards automation of alt text.
Yep.
So this is completely separate, but Instagram, Facebook has been doing it for a while. Chrome and Canary, as an experiment, you could actually get that done right now as we speak. But it's behind a flag. But again, that has less to do with performance, unfortunately.
Yeah, that feels like something where machine learning image recognition
Oh,
could
it's
be
happening.
super
It
powerful
totally
and
is.
helpful.
It's happening as we speak.
Thanks,
Thank you
man.
so much.
We appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Dun,
There you go,
dun,
Emma.
dun, dun, dun.
That's
all I know.
All right.
I don't know how the song goes.
I don't know how it goes, or I'd be singing.
The lady in the back.
All right,
Come
front
on
row.
down.
Price is right. We need an extra mic over here.
We have a few more slots after this one if you'd like. If you're interested, come close
Yeah.
so we have less awkward stalling. Hello. Hi, what's your name? What would you like to talk about?
Jill Burns, and first of all, I love your podcast.
Well, thank you.
Great to meet you guys.
We appreciate that.
I wanted to just mention that I came into coding, well, years ago, but re-entered recently the
Okay.
coding fields through tech re-entry. I had 18 years as a computer programmer, software engineer.
Wow.
Took 10 years off, raised kids, and
Full-time
then
job.
Yeah.
and moved 3 times.
Okay.
And then came back in as a software developer again. So the senior, we had an apprenticeship. I had a mentor, which was crucial to the program. But I think it's another way to bring women in that have had experience, and you know that, we've done our learning at one point.
Right.
And then just have the opportunity. I'm so excited to be back in the field.
That's beautiful. What's changed the most from your first time to now?
I think the database work for me.
It's way easier now, way harder, way different.
I mean, relational databases into the NoSQL was probably, I would say, my biggest leap.
Okay.
When I left, I was doing Java and web services, and now it's Node.js, cloud, and NoSQL. So a couple of different jumps, but I started in the mainframe, so
Yeah. Oh.
going from Fortran in high school,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pascal in
We could
college.
probably learn a thing or two.
Fortran.
All right.
All right,
see?
history. I was in scientific computing
There
back
you
in the
go.
day.
Well,
Yeah.
what hasn't changed then? You come back and you're like, what's the same?
Exactly. I've seen it change a number of times.
Well, but what hasn't changed?
Ex-
Oh, you're saying
what
everything has
hasn't
changed.
Has
I see what you're
anything not
saying.
changed?
I get it.
What hasn't changed?
Surely there's some constants. Change is the only constant, right?
I would say,
I just blew
Jerry
Emma's-
gives me this look like, you're going to back me up here, right?
I just blew Emma's mind. Did your
I'm
mind
not sure there
explode?
are any constants. I mean, there are a lot of similarities. I will say
Okay.
there are a lot of similarities, but the faces of who I'm working with is getting a lot more diverse than historically.
Yeah.
I draw on a lot of my knowledge from other programming languages and databases.
How did you get up to speed when you came back in?
I started, well, you know what? I attended conferences like this while I was out. I did attend conferences. I listened to podcasts. And I
Excellent.
did online training when I could, because it was still a full-time job raising kids.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, that was it. And then when I started, it was a 12-week apprenticeship with the option of, on both sides, being hired or not at the end. So that was my 12-week of, okay, here's your project.
Yeah,
You've got a few
that
weeks,
is the best
check
way
and code.
to do. If you can make that happen, I mean, if I'm looking for a job, that's my favorite way to interview, because it's how you learn what this place is going to be like to work with. Because folks will put on their happy face when they're interviewing you, and you work with them for a while, and you discover it is a cesspit. Or other folks who are like not super jazzed at interviews and don't do it very well, but then you work there, and it's like the best place ever. So yeah,
That's how Europe does it. So when I moved to Germany, they were like, oh, you're on probation for 6 months. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, no, it's a standard. So everyone generally joins probation for 6 months. At the end, either party can walk away. That's a good amount of time to like get your...
To know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's... We should standardize that.
Kind of cool idea.
That's a good
we absolutely should.
And I did the 3-question take-home interview.
Yeah.
So when I came back in,
You like that?
I got the 3 questions.
Yeah.
so.
That's
Yeah,
very cool.
I think the both sides is key too, right? Like
Yes.
this if it's instituted as a company power play, it's terrible, right? Like, oh, we're gonna be watching you for this first 3
Right.
months or 6 months,
Right.
and then we
Like
decide.
probation's a weird word for me.
But if you come in with it saying like, this is a period, I do it as a consultant, I do it if I'm looking for a job, like I want to do a test run, and I want to figure out by working with you, is this a good place or not? And it's my decision to walk away. And yeah, you could decide if you want me to go too, but you won't. It's my
But
decision.
you won't.
You won't.
That confidence. Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
Yay.
Jill, thanks so much for joining
Yes,
us. Thanks for
thank
listening
you.
to the show, and welcome back to the community
Yeah, welcome
for all
back.
those years. Okay, I did see another hand poke up, and then it dropped immediately. I'm hoping that hand will go back up again. Oh, here it is right here. Oh,
Yes, yes, yes.
Yay, I'm
pointing
not singing
fingers.
anymore.
Go,
Round
Emma,
of
sing.
applause.
All right, here she comes.
Yeah, I think she raised her hand first, but if not, she just got voluntold.
Yeah, you did. Ooh, voluntold. I like that.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
What's your name?
Janissa. Yeah.
Janae. Nice to meet you, Janae.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming up on stage with us. What would you like to talk about?
I wanted to answer Vanessa's question about whiteboarding, alternatives to whiteboarding, and
Okay, awesome.
what other companies are doing.
Yeah.
So I guess briefly, my background is graphic design. I went to school for design. So there are a lot of people I know who are making that jump from design into development. It's kind of natural, right? You're already on the computer.
Tangential space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People are going to ask you to do little HTML here and there, and next thing you know, you're like full on
Reactive.
development.
Yeah.
Yes. So I took a career break, and I came back and found out like everything changed and had to like quickly get up to speed on how to code, and I ended up doing a lot of job hunting. And one of the places that I interviewed at was Red Ventures, and they had a booth here at ATO last year. And I met a guy who remembered my name, and when they came up for looking for someone to hire, they reached out to me and said, we really liked you. We don't really have a role in particular, but we'd like to talk with you. So they brought me in to do one of those meet 10 people for 6 hours. It was one of those big interviews, but I did have to do whiteboarding, but I sat on a panel for a couple of hours, and they just asked explain what are you good at, and why are you here, and and just really try to get an understanding of where my strengths are and my interests, and then they were able to kind of manipulate the interview to see exactly how I would fit in. So I did do a whiteboard. I really sucked at it, but they were like, we don't expect you to be good.
Okay.
We know you're going to be sweating. We just want to hear how you think, and you did well, even though you feel like you did poorly.
Yeah.
So they were very interested, and I did end up passing on that opportunity. And recently, I got employed at another company called MedThink, and then I did another career jump. So I'll be starting at IBM. Yeah.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a long journey.
What do you know? What team or what area you're?
Under the cognitive applications is the
Cool.
larger department, and then I'll be doing front-end development for them.
Awesome.
So they
What
had.
did you think of that interview process?
It was so cool. It was very cool, and it was at first I thought I'd applied a couple of times before and failed, and I was like, I'm not going to do this again. I'm just so tired, But a recruiter found me on LinkedIn, and it was a take-home application. So what was cool is that they didn't have a particular goal. They basically gave you a very open-ended task, and they wanted to see how you thought all the way from the wireframe, UX, UI strategy into development. So I ended up to me it felt like a fun personal pet project. So I already went in not having that pressure, and I just went to town on it.
Yeah.
I threw in all my XD skills and my wireframing and UX, and then into my front-end development, and then even try to do a little back-end with some Express, which, it was kind of, I was afraid I wasn't going to get it. But when I had the chance to come in and just tell the team, because you have to sit with 2 or 3 developers, I got to explain my whole process and what I was thinking and why I did it, and just go through all the things that I was really strong about, all the things that I was pretty good in. And then I think they also kind of stepped back and thought, okay, she's pretty good with this, but probably not as strong as here. But I didn't feel that pressure. no binary tree searches, because I have gone through that. That was ridiculous. Fibonacci. I'm a designer first, right, and then developer, so I can draw your tree, but I'm not gonna code some stuff.
I feel like one of the things that you're highlighting here is like this should not be like if you're looking at your hiring process as an employer, like this should not be a judging process. This is dating, right? I don't go on a date. I mean, I haven't been on a date in 20 years, but I don't go on a date and be like, all right, you're a 7 out of 10 on this and a 9 out of 10 on that, right? Like it's looking for compatibility. It's looking for like, are you the type of person that I want to work with, and are you going to fit well in our team?
Right, and I think that's probably how you can retain talent, because if I'm coming in knowing like I'm going to be looked on, like they're expecting me to do well at what I'm doing well already, then you're just going to start from a point where you're going to excel. So that's how I feel. I'm pretty excited.
Aw.
13 seconds.
You want to give a shout out?
To
Anybody you like.
my son, I'm going to do a talk tomorrow. He's going to be here. He's 3, and we're going to do a talk about bringing minority children into STEM.
I love that.
Yes.
Awesome.
When and where is that talk?
Everyone go watch your talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's 2:05, room 205 at 11:45 a.m.
Okay.
Aw.
Yes.
You heard it
3 is
here.
such a fun age.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that is our time. That being said, if you have a lightning chat you would like to perform, or is it a performance? I don't know. If you'd like to chat with us, we will be down in the main floor, booth 72. We're mic'd up. We're ready to continue these conversations. We'll get the timer going and everything. Any final words from my esteemed colleagues up here?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that came up here and put themselves on the spot. I think that sparked some really interesting conversations. Yeah.
K-Ball?
Y'all rock, but I want more dancing.
We all rock,
Next time.
but more dancing. Okay, that's our show. That's JS Party. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you next week. That's what we usually say. That's weird, though. We'll see you next time.